Today I have a very special guest on my channel. It's my buyer's agent. I've worked with Jonathan in the past on procuring property in South Florida. Jonathan specializes in the South Florida market. I'm currently working with Jonathan on identifying and buying oceanfront properties. A lot of clients are interested in setting up their Plan B residency in a state like Texas or Florida, where they can easily cover the journey from the comfort of their backyard to their country of Plan B residency. We're going to look at one of the most popular and convenient journeys from South Florida, 100 nautical miles west to the island of Bahamas. We're going to learn some of the technical details, what are the safety measures, what are some of the precautions that you should take for this international travel. It's safe to do this. We're also going to learn more about the Bahamas program, where a simple property investment can get you a residency, and that helps you set up this all exciting international Atlantic setup where you can have your Plan A, Plan B residencies connected. It's a 1-hour journey and we're going to learn a whole lot more. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel, my name is Geographic, and here we discuss investments that lead to Plan B securities. So if you haven't subscribed, take a moment and subscribe so you're always up to date on the latest and greatest regarding any of the programs. Alright, let's get started. So I'm here with Jonathan, and Jonathan is my buyer's agent. Jonathan works for one of the biggest leading brand names in the US in the real estate domain. We are working on an oceanfront property next, which is finding something which has ocean access. The point being that you have accessibility directly to the Atlantic, North Atlantic, South Atlantic, and one should be able to travel from the comfort of their backyard straight to, let's say, a country like Bahamas or Dominican Republic, anything that's within the Atlantic zone. So I'm going to have that interesting discussion with you. Also, what I've learned is that you have friends or clients who may have done that journey, which is a journey from South Florida, which is Miami, to Bahamas, Bimini. So it's going to be interesting to learn how that's done. And also, I think what I would like to learn from you is some of the technical details, like what is the yacht size, what is some of the precautions that one should take when they're doing an international journey like that. On our channel, there are a lot of international clients who are trying to establish Plan B residencies in the US, in other places. I think there has been an interesting trend of late where a lot of clients are looking for that ocean connectivity. So there are a lot of US clients who are from other parts of the US who are looking to establish that residency in places like Texas, Florida, where they're going to get that ocean access. They have that Atlantic connectivity and they can travel to some of these Plan B residencies that they are trying to establish. So one of the very first questions, Jonathan, is how long have you been in this space? And what's your experience with the Florida market?
Sure, great question. So to answer your question, I think that I've been in the business since 2014. Have helped many buyers, multifamilies, luxury, in the luxury arena. I've helped and sold several of those. First-time home buyers, vacant lots. I've pretty much helped with almost every facet but commercial. That's just a space I haven't gotten into yet, but you never know what the future holds.
Right, so primarily focusing on the residential homes space. So someone who is interested in not the commercial but a personal space where they're establishing a residency, that's your area of specialty. That's where you excel. 100%. Right. The other thing, Jonathan, that I see makes you quite different from some of the other people that I've worked with is the reviews and the overwhelming response. I know you've been since 2014, so that's more than a decade in the real estate space. But the amount of reviews and the feedback that one gets to read about you online is tremendous, is enormous. How do you keep up with that kind of quality of service, especially when you're closing out on so many homes?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I never really thought about it, so that's something I kind of have to take a little bit further dive on. But my approach and my philosophy is treat everybody like they're part of your family and give a little bit of yourself as you would helping a family member. And I think I've been able to accomplish that pretty successfully. The other thing that I've noticed has really helped, and thank you for mentioning the reviews. I try and stay as humble as I can, so I don't typically review them that much, but it's really just everything I do is with the sole focus of how can I help, how can I protect you through the process, how can I help you with making the most informed decision, because it's a huge purchase, and so I think that's really the best approach, is to just try and put myself in your shoes. And if I were in the buyer's shoes, what would I expect of the person that I'm working with, or who's working for me, shall I say? Right. And that's the approach that I take.
Right. Absolutely agree with you, and I have had personal first-hand experience with that, Jonathan. I know this was during the pandemic, and I was looking for a property specifically in South Florida. Again, I couldn't make it physically because I was in Canada, I think, at that time, and I was looking for a quick purchase. We did this through the app. I think we were on Zoom. We did a quick walkthrough of the property, and everything was done remotely. So I actually didn't step foot in Florida when this was going on. And something that you did, which is very unique, is that you took care of the whole process, which is negotiations with the buyer. It was a tough negotiation, and I think you really went over and beyond in getting that sorted for us. And secondly, you were able to secure the property and hand it over to us while we were not there. And what are the areas that you cover within the real estate space? So let's say someone wanted to buy a property. What are some of your areas that you specialize?
Yeah, so I've kind of taken a little bit of a different approach. A lot of agents will farm, if you will, or they'll be hyper-focused on one specific location. I think that's great, and I think it works for a lot of folks, but I think it also, in turn, limits your exposure to other markets, other areas. So I cover literally from Port St. Lucie, which is Indian River County, all the way to almost Fort Lauderdale. So everywhere in between. I've been thankful and lucky enough, shall I say, to have helped families purchase in all of those locations. So I have a pretty good grasp on each location, some of the nuances that are specific to those areas. So usually when someone says, hey, I'm looking in, for example, like Palm Beach Gardens, this is the criteria I'm looking for. I may be able to say, okay, phenomenal, let's go see what's out there, but I could say, have you also considered potentially these other locations? I think the money would stretch farther, and everything that you're looking for, I think we could obtain within your desired budget, if not slightly under, given our current market situation. So, it just kind of helps expand the knowledge base by not being hyper-focused on the one location.
Right. The other thing I think that's unique, Jonathan, is that let's say someone is looking at some completely different market. Let's say, in between I was looking for the Seattle market. So you were able to connect me with the right agent within the network, which took care of that requirement as well. So you're not only focusing on these broader areas where you're getting your specialty to the table, but you're also able to network and connect with the right agent even in other areas, which is a great help.
Yeah, I'd say that we're looking for folks who meet the core values of the brokerage, just from my own experience going through interview processes. Having some reports in a different role that I managed, and I know how the hiring criteria was for that. So I can tell you it's a very values-based hiring process. So the good thing with that is we have a large network. We're in almost every major city in the U.S., and we're continuing to expand into other markets. We just recently expanded into Canada, and then other markets within the U.S. So the reason why I'm saying all that is when you're looking to establish a relationship with an agent, with a brokerage, it always goes back to the what's in it for me, right? And what's in it for our buyers, I think more so than anything, it's you can expect the same level of service you're receiving in one market within multiple markets. So if your search transitions into different areas, different states, you can expect that we can be able to hand you off. They'll provide the same level of service and deliver on those core values.
Right. And that's interesting that you brought up. I think I was also in Canada at one point where I was looking for a condo purchase in the Canadian market. And I think you were able to connect me with someone within the network who specialized in that area, which was a big help. So Jonathan, I know I have had a personal experience with working with you in the past. We were able to get approximately $500,000 property. Currently, we are working on $1 to $2 million property, that oceanfront kind of a property. What is the range that you work with? What is like the or the highest that you have been able to close on? And typically, if someone is looking at a Florida market based on their net worth and based on how much they want to invest in their property, what is typically the range that you're looking at?
I mean, it depends. So, been lucky enough and fortunate enough to have quite a bit of volume as far as buyers that I've been working with. I always hate these kind of questions because I feel it's like bragging, and I'm not that kind of a person. But I would say I've been fortunate enough to have sold luxury properties in excess of $7 million.
Wow.
I mean, but then on the flip side, I've also sold things at 100, 150, so it's, I have experience in the whole range of home values. But I mean, specifically, if you're asking as far as performance in the past 2 years, I've closed over 100 transactions, and I think I'm at like 75 million year to date in the past 24 months.
Wow, so 100 properties in the last 1 year and last 2 years, and then approximately $75 million in volume. Wow, that's amazing. Do you have clients that also come in from internationally? Like, let's say they're not from the US, they're coming from different countries, they're looking for properties in the US, maybe they're not ethnically Americans. So do you get a lot of international client base as well?
I have. I've had experience working with some international customers.
So next topic is very interesting, Jonathan. Particularly, I'm interested in talking more about the Bahamas. Bahamas has a great program, which is a $750K investment in your own property. So let's say if a client wanted to spend $750K in their own property, maybe it's a condo, maybe it's a home. If they do that investment in Bahamas, then they qualify for a residency, which is you can live there for as long as you want, as long as you're maintaining the investment. So one of the things that people are particularly, I've seen a trend these days, is people want to travel from one place to the other without much of hassle. When you talk about catching flights, long waits, security clearances, and a whole lot of time that's consumed in the whole journey. But if you have your own setup where you're jumping off of your own backyard, let's say in your yacht, and you have the ability to travel to a nearby country, let's say Bahamas in this case, because they have this unique program. So I really wanted to talk more about, is that possible? Is it possible for someone to travel internationally like that? I know you've mentioned that you have clients or friends who have done this before, so wanted to get to know at a high level, is it possible, and how does one do that?
I think anything's possible, right? But it's absolutely. So where we're positioned on the southeast coast of Florida, Bimini, the Bahamas, it's not very far. I think what really comes into question at that aspect is, have you ever made that journey before, that crossing? Do you know anybody who has? And then a lot of my friends who have done the crossing and who continue to do the crossing, you first start off by you team up tandem with somebody who has made the crossing. You're in your own vessels and you go over together, you come back together. And then after a couple trips, once you have that level of comfort, then a lot of folks just go on their own. I mean, I have several people that I know that on a in spur of the moment will be like, hey, let's go to Bimini for the weekend. Right. And then, they hop in their vessel and then off they go. I think the thing that really comes into question when you're considering a crossing like that, as with anything further south into the Gulf, is the size of the vessel, duration of the voyage. I really think it all comes back down to vessel size, depending on the type of crossing or the distance that you're going to be traveling.
Right. So Bahamas is, I think, 100 nautical miles west of Miami. Sure. So when you're talking about a vessel, what is the minimum, I think it goes in foots. So what is the minimum footer that you need to make this journey safely? I know this was one of the things that I was discussing with you when I was choosing the property. So yeah.
I think everything evolves around comfort level. The folks that I know that have made the crossing multiple times, I want to say they have a 36-foot.
36-footer. So the minimum vessel size that you feel, again, it all depends, but according to you, the safer bet would be something at least that 36-footer or more.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, I mean, you could possibly do it in a smaller size vessel, but just keep in mind, depending on, waves, you could feel it a lot more in a smaller vessel. Plus, then again, should anything happen. I just think you're safer in a larger vessel if you're going to make that kind of a crossing. But I mean, I'm sure people watching this conversation may have a difference of opinion. I just personally know that everybody, friends and family who have made that voyage, they've been in a 36-footer or higher.
And this is something you get better at once you experience more, once you do this journey frequently. That's when you kind of get to know what, the safety measures and all of those kind of things. So first time is always nervous, but as you keep doing this journey, I think it gets more easier. And then if you are, let's say, expanding, let's say you want to go to the Dominican Republic for your next trip, which is much further down, I think this really helps, this journey really helps then set up the stage for other further international travel in that space.
Yeah, 100%. It gets you comfortable with making voyages of that length, that distance. And then it'll also help you understand maybe where your boundaries are with the specific vessel that you have. What is the furthest you're comfortably willing to go?
Right. Is this a completely safe journey if done correctly? Jonathan, let's say going from South Florida to Bimini, Bahamas, and then making that journey back, is it relatively safe, you would think?
I mean, safe's subjective, so I always like to caution that. My opinion of safe could be completely different than somebody else's, but I would say if you go about it the correct way and getting your comfortability level up, then you should be fine. Again, I wouldn't recommend just hopping in a vessel, never having done it before, and then just shooting for the stars. I think if you follow the appropriate steps, maybe charter a captain to come with you, or definitely tandem with another vessel who has made the voyage, or a captain of a vessel who has made that voyage. And everything is with practice comes comfort. So I think if you take the appropriate measures, then you shouldn't have a problem.
Right, so getting some experience with either friend, family, or as you said, hire a captain, maybe go with someone and have some experience with traveling with someone, so that you get the courage to then sort of do it on your own. But as long as you follow the right safety norms, as long as your vessel's the correct size, all of that.
I would say the vessel is up to date on as much maintenance as possible to ensure that there's no failures or potential of failure.
That's very important. And also I think maybe having some backup in case something goes wrong.
The tandem vessel,
exactly,
that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. So when someone is choosing a property for this purposes, which is international travel, one of the things that I always worry about is the canal width, because at the end of the day, when you come back or when you're heading, you need to turn your vessel around and all of that. And now with a lot of experience, that's all easy, but someone who is starting off, it's always good to have some room so you can manage this. What is the minimum width of the canal that you think one should look for?
It really is going to depend on the vessel, because it goes a little bit more in depth than just the width.
Right.
You could have downdraft, which is the keel of the vessel. So is the canal at low tide going to be deep enough to support the downdraft of the vessel, plus some additional space for like a buffer? So I think it's a little bit more involved than just size. I think once you've determined what distance you're willing to travel, and you've done your due diligence or research as a buyer on the type of vessel that you're going to need and the length that you're going to need, you'll get all your specific measurements as far as draw that you'll need, and then you can basically hunt for a property based on that. Do you need 90-foot seawall and dock space? Do you need 80, 60? That exposure as far as waterfront properties are concerned will have a huge difference intrinsically in the value of it. And then once you know the size of the vessel, we can navigate width of canals and
Right, so a lot of technical details involved, not only the width, but you're saying also the flooring. So it has to be of a certain distance for the ship to not, the yacht not to touch the floor and all of that. So the width, the height, and the space obviously to turn your vessel around. So all those things need to be taken into account. So it's not just a simple thing as seeing something and getting it. A lot of technical study has to happen before you finalize a property within that space.
Yeah, 100%. I think at that point it would all revolve around the specifics of the vessel, and then you search for a property that could accommodate it from that.
So this is the visual space surrounding your backyard, but there's something externally also that's at play, the fixed bridges that a lot of listings talk about or don't talk about. So does the fixed bridges really matter when you're planning your international travel?
Well, yeah, 100%, because it's going to limit the bridge height. If it's fixed, that means it doesn't have a raising aspect, so it's fixed in place. So it's definitely going to have a huge impact on the size of the vessel. And what I mean by that is canopy height, if you will. You know, will the boat fit underneath it at high tide, low tide? Because if you have a fixed bridge and you have a specific vessel, then you may have to time your coming and going to the property on those waterways based off the tide table. Low tide obviously will give you a little bit more height.
Got it. So so really, when you're exiting your property and you're headed in international waters, even if you have, let's say, a bigger boat like a 36-footer, but if the clearance is not enough, which is, you have some aggressive fixed bridges, you might have a bigger boat but you won't be able to pass through, and especially with the tide you might lose a foot or two based on the timing of the day. So that is a big consideration. Ideally, if you really want to do a frequent international travel by boat, one should look for something without the fixed bridges.
Yes.
Right. And that affects the cost of the properties. The properties with no fixed bridges is much higher as compared to the ones which has fixed bridges. So the fixed bridges one is more good for local travel within your space.
Smaller vessels.
Smaller vessels.
Maybe you're just going out, you have a center console, you want to go just do like a day fishing trip, something like that. Maybe 18 foot, 21 foot, something a little bit smaller, even if it's a cabin cruiser, but really it's the height factor is what's really going to drive that.
Right. So again, to conclude, I think Jonathan, fantastic interview. I think we got a lot of information. I think that's very valuable to my clients, to the viewers who are watching this channel. So if my clients, let's say from the US, they want to set up this lifestyle, they are looking for their first property or second property, let's say in Florida, are you able to help within that space?
Absolutely, would love the opportunity to do so.
So if you are looking to get started with your second residency or primary residency, let's say you're looking at Florida, you're looking to set up an Atlantic lifestyle, Jonathan can completely take care of the whole process, start to finish. You can reach us, we can connect you with Jonathan, and then he can take over the process from there on. The one other thing, Jonathan, I wanted to ask you is a lot of my clients are international clients. Let's say they're from Dubai or they are from other regions of the world. If they are looking to buy a property quickly, I know properties, especially in Florida, fly real quick, and there isn't necessarily that cushion of coming down, spending the 7-10 days to take a look at it, tour multiple properties. Properties fly really fast. So let's say if someone wants to do this online, 100% remote, are you able to help someone who wants to buy a property completely 100% remote?
Oh yeah, and I think you're you're living proof of how we're able to accomplish that. But absolutely, we can leverage Zoom, Google, Skype, FaceTime, WhatsApp. We can leverage any one of those platforms to show you the property virtually. I can supply you with all of the websites that a prospective buyer would want to know as far as statistical, demographical, things that I might not be able to answer specifically because of licensing requirements, but to give them a better idea as to that property and surrounds. And then we can, it's like it would be with any other purchase as far as dialing into the comps,
Right.
Contract to close.
Absolutely, yeah. And I am, I'm a proof of that. I've purchased a property 100% remote via the Zoom app. As I said earlier, Jonathan was able to take care of the whole process for me. Eventually, obviously, I got to visit the property, all of that, but the entire process was completely taken care of online. The other thing in the US market is that you have the property insurance company that insures your title, the title insurance, unlike some other countries where you have to do all the due diligence yourself. Here you do have to do some basic due diligence, but the title insurance really covers a lot of the problems with the property, so you have more peace of mind doing this transaction faster. A final question, Jonathan, the whole process, the time, how long does it take from, let's say, viewing a property to actually getting possession of the property?
Really just depends on the buyer's buying power, right? So if it's a cash transaction, I've had several settle within 7 to 10 days. If it's a finance transaction, it really just depends on the lender and then how quickly the buyer can get the underwriters all of the loan-specific information that they need, supporting documentation like income, asset verification, things like that, tax returns if it's needed.
Right.
So I mean, a standard finance transaction, I've had some close anywhere as quick as 14 days as well. Standard time frames about 30 for a finance transaction, but again, it really just depends on the lender, how quickly the buyer can get all the information to the lender. And again, I've had them close just as fast as cash transactions.
Gotcha. So the typical comfortable time frame is 30 days with a finance transaction. If you go aggressive, you think it can be done as quickly as 14-15 days, really stretching it too aggressively. But with a cash transaction, I think you had helped in my case. I think it was a 7 or 8 day close, and we actually got possession of the property in that time frame. So that's how quickly this can move. One of the key things you need to take into account when you're closing that quickly, you need great support. You need a good real estate agent. My personal experience with Jonathan has been the best, and I think his reviews, what the clients say, even with much larger valued properties, I think he's been able to go aggressive, go quickly, safely, and close on time. So I would 100% recommend Jonathan's services to anyone who is interested in looking to purchase in this area. Jonathan, again, thank you so much for your time, and I really look forward to this continued partnership, and hopefully we have new opportunities with additional clients who are more globally diversified and who are looking for that Atlantic lifestyle, meaning setting up, let's say, a spare residency in some cases in South Florida, and then expanding or looking to expand in nearby countries like the Caribbean countries, Bahamas, Dominican Republic, you have South America. So once you have access to Miami or have a property on the ocean front in Miami, it really opens up that whole horizon, that whole radius, where you can then look at exploring different countries, setting up Plan B residencies and all of that. So really looking forward to working with you.
Wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity. Look forward as well.